Hi everybody, hi. Good to see you again. I took a couple weeks break to have a staycation and it was wonderful, but I'm happy to be back and doing the second of my 20 free yoga videos for my RYT 500. And welcome to my home studio. I have set it up to be slightly more conducive to what we will be discussing today. You can see my salt rock lamp. Ooh, there it is, yes, there. And then a couple candles in front of it, which I'll not attempt to point to, that took way too long. And the theme that we will be working off of today is continuing the chakras series that we did a couple weeks ago. And it will be moving up to the second of the chakras, the sacral chakra or Svadhisthana. And this is the one that I think probably needs to be talked about the most because it's located in part of the body that we don't always want to talk about in society. It's pretty much centered exactly in the pelvis, and it's everything that's associated with that area. So reproductive system, hips, and just like sexuality, that's something that if we could be more open about and talk about more freely, people would find a lot more healing and healthiness and be more willing to seek out advice and help on it. But instead, there's still a lot of stigma and shame around discussing sexuality and anything associated with it. So of all of the 7 chakras, I think this is the one that probably needs to be talked about the most. You can't talk about it without admitting that the reproductive system is an incredibly vital part of the body, and it's a natural part of the body. It also involves the eliminatory system as well. Also a very vital and important part of the body that needs to be talked about. So the health of those systems is vital to our ability to function. And when you have dis-ease in those systems, just like anywhere else in the body, it causes dis-ease of the rest of the body and of the mind. So Svadhisthana is associated, yes, in that physical space, but in terms of how we are as spiritual and emotional human beings, it speaks a lot to our more emotional sides. So when we move further up into the heart chakra, that really gets into like our ability to give and receive love. But think about the sacral chakra as being associated with our emotions on a more primal scale. So when we tend to have immediate sensations or reactions to things, that's more sacral chakra stuff. It's good. I mean, reacting and verbalizing our reactions can be an unhealthy thing if we allow that to carry us away. But the tendency to feel a reaction to things is important. It's a natural instinct in the body, and to be aware of it is a very good thing. So that speaks to the sacral chakra. The sacral chakra is also associated with passion. So you obviously associate it with like a sexual passion, but more than that, any type of passion. So it could be the things you are passionate about. Like, what do you care about? What causes speak to you? What really sets your soul on fire? And fire is a great word because fire is a fantastic visualization for the sacral chakra. The color associated with it is orange. So you can almost think of like a glowing heat that burns in a way that fuels your desires, your passions, and in that way your soul. It has to do with our ability to create. So again, the fact that it's associated with the reproductive system, it speaks a lot to how a healthily functioning sacral chakra means that you will be at your best if you are a creative person in any way. And I would say we're all creative people in our own ways. Some people more strongly identify like that. And for some of us, maybe thinking of ourselves as creative people is harder to do. But because we all do have this energy center and we all have a creative side, we all have something that we are destined to make, something that we are good at making. So when I work with students on the sacral chakra, I really try to focus first on that. Focus on what are you making, or what do you want to make? And if you don't consider yourself an artist, that is okay. You still make things. So you, I mean, you may just make phone calls. you make conversation. You might make dinner tonight. You make love. You make friendships. We are all makers and creators. And so you don't have to literally be a writer, or painter, or musician to be a creative person. And it could be that if you've never thought of yourself as a creative person, then focusing on this energy center would be a good place to start, because it may be that you have blocked your own energy and you need to heal it. So I'm very excited. And to circle back around to what I said at the beginning, this chakra should not ever be avoided, because it's going to require us to, I'd say, touch on more sensitive parts of ourselves. Dealing with things like reproduction, sexuality, and what a healthy view on those things looks like is complicated, and it's not openly talked about. So as you go through this practice, if you're just like feeling like this is different than I thought and like challenging, then that's okay. That's natural, and just go with it. I would strongly encourage you, not just in this class, in all of them, if you're taking this journey with me, to embrace the journey and embrace the experience, and try to release expectations that it's going to be a certain way or you need to be a certain way. I hit most of the things I want to tell you, except a suggested mantra for the next 50 minutes of our class together would be, I flow with the rhythms of life. This was not one I came up with myself. This is from a study book I've been using, and it really spoke to me because I like the idea of rhythm. To me, is associated with music and dancing, which are both very creative endeavors. And for those of us who struggle with putting our creativity out there, things like dancing can be terrifying. So to actually flow with a rhythm, if you can release the stiffness and let yourself flow with it, will be a very creative space. And I like the idea of the rhythms of life. It's I think when we are at our most creative, we flow through our lives very freely, and we are most likely to live our fullest and our best lives. So without further ado, we'll get started. And like for us to get started on our backs today, I would recommend that you grab a couple blocks or a couple large books to have nearby. I think that will be all you'll need for today, unless you want a blanket for when we come to Shavasana. If you want to have it on top of you or underneath you, if it's cold where you are. I can't envision that personally right now, but I'm sure it is somewhere. All right, come onto your back. And once you're there, plant your feet into the mat and point your knees to the sky. So we're going to focus our practice on different poses that both strengthen the hips and stretch the hips, and the areas around the pelvis. So that involves like inner legs, outer legs, and the glutes. And we'll also do a few side bends, because what side bends do is they take the hips and kind of shift them from side to side and throw off the center of gravity a little bit. So they're also focusing in that area. So we'll be doing a few things. So start out, feet planted, knees pointing up, and then bring the inside edges of your feet together and start to drop your knees towards the earth. So this is Supta Baddha Konasana, or reclined bound angle pose. And you, like me, may have your knees floating above the earth. So if you let your knees float, then gravity will help you find a deeper stretch, which can be great. We're going to hold here for a little bit. Option to grab your blocks or your big books and bring them underneath your thighs. The closer in towards your hips that you bring the blocks or books, the more your knees will lift away from the earth and bring them to a point where you're still feeling a little bit of a stretch, but it's not so intense that you can't stay with it. I want to stay here for a few minutes. And so what I'll encourage you to do is what I've already started doing, and to be honest, I wasn't even thinking about it, although I planned to do it, but bring your hands to your hip points. So you should feel just a little bit of a bony sensation depending on your body structure. You may feel it more or less, but it's the points of the pelvis. And once you're there, if you'd like to, just use your palms to give yourself a slight massage there. And then rest your hands against your hip points. And bring your awareness into anything you may be experiencing in your inner and outer legs, hips or pelvis. And imagine that your breath becomes sort of like a warm and healing energy that goes into that space. You may even visualize the color orange here. If your eyes are closed, imagine the color behind your closed eyelids as if you were staring at it behind your eyes. Maybe come back to the mantra of I flow with the rhythms of life. I flow with the rhythms of life. Well, if you were using blocks underneath your legs, I'm going to encourage you to take a moment and set them aside so that you can feel the sensation of gravity gently pulling the knees down and likely deepening the sensations you're experiencing. And slowly begin to close your knees. Bring your feet a little wider than hips width. And bring your arms alongside your body and windshield wiper your knees from side to side. And bring your knees back to center. Hug one in towards your chest and bring the other one to meet it. And take a pause here. Maybe draw some circles on the ceiling or the sky with your knees in one direction. And then go the opposite way. And come back to center. Rock off to one side. Pause for just a moment. Use your hands to guide your way up. And make your way forward. Eventually find your way to a tabletop position. Then flat back, long spine, knees underneath your hips and hands under your shoulders. Then bring your big toes together. Separate your knees wide. Shift your hips back to your heels for child's pose. Rest your forehead against the earth. Reach your fingertips forward. Your elbows can be in line with your shoulders, or you can bring your elbows wide and bring your hands together. Either way, focus your energy mostly into, this isn't what we do with every child's pose, but since this is a specific class, focus your energy into, again, the pelvis, hips, inner and outer legs. This is a very deepening stretch for that area. Try to allow your breath to create as much space as possible in all of those different areas. And if you feel that you could use some support, you can always grab your block and rest it on your heels and sit your hips back against that, especially if your hips don't reach your heels. Once again, maybe imagine the breath creates warm and healing energy going back into the focus space around the sacral chakra. We were all meant to make something. It doesn't have to stand out greatly amongst all the rest of the things that have been created to have a deep impact. Well, if you're the sort of person who wants to make a big break before really putting everything out there, maybe now is the time to show the world what you are passionate about. It really doesn't matter so much if the rest of the world is watching. What you do will still have meaningful impact. All right, time to get a little more movement. Make your way back up to your tabletop position. If you used blocks, set them aside. Come back to your flat back, and on your next inhale, stretch your belly down, lift your hips and chest up for cow pose. Exhale, press into your mat, round your spine up towards the sky for cat pose. Inhale, lengthen down. Exhale, round up. So I encourage you in this movement to focus on the rocket and roll of the pelvis. So also important to take care of and protect the hip joints. A great way to do that is two things: joint mobility and strengthening and stretching the muscles around it. So we're going to do all of that today. We're going to do some fun movement for the hips that are very, very simple, but really healthy. And then we'll do some strengthening and stretching for the muscles around the hips. And altogether, that just makes for a very happy pelvis. I don't think I've ever said the words happy pelvis before, but it's making me happy, and I'm definitely going to come back to that. All right, lots of good cat and cow. Come back to your tabletop position. Take hip circles. So again, simple motions for the hip joints. Large circles in one direction. And pause and go the opposite way. And come back to center. All right, so next pose is going to be a puppy pose. It's not a very common one. It's a little challenging. So if you would like to grab a pillow to potentially have nearby for softening, you can. I'm gonna have my bolster nearby because, to be honest, I might need it. I'm not sure. It really just depends on how my body is. So what we're gonna do is see how your hips are in line with your knees and your thighs are perpendicular with the mat. We're going to try to keep that shape. And then we're going to lower our hearts down towards the earth. So Hips and everything below are staying just about the same. Heart is lowering down to the earth. This is a puppy pose. My girlfriend's dog does this all the time. Much better than I can. But it is a legit thing. Dogs do this. It's a very good stretch for your back. And it's a back bend, but you've got the front of your body supported by resting your arms and resting your forehead to the earth. Now, I wish I could demonstrate it for you, but my back flexibility, like everyone's, it only goes to a certain point. In a very deep puppy pose, you actually have your heart against the earth, and that's why, if you would like, you can grab a pillow, or I've got my bolster here, and you can rest your heart on top of it, so then your heart is supported, and it doesn't have to rest against the earth. So up to you. I'm finding this feels good, so I'm going to stay here. We're going to hold here about 8 to 10 breaths. So while this is a pose that's in stillness, it's a heart opener. Heart openers tend to raise the heart rate slightly. So it's an active stretch. So breathe as deeply as you can. A couple more breaths here. All right. To release out of your puppy pose, plant your hands, work your way back up to tabletop. If you decided to use your pillow, set it aside. And we're going to bring hands about a handprint closer towards the front edge of the mat. Start to tuck your toes. Lift your hips and shift your heels back to find a downward facing dog. Feet are hips width, heels directly behind your toes. Hands are shoulders width and thumbs pointing in towards each other. You can always widen your feet and hands. They don't have to be hip and shoulder width. You can also bend your knees to help keep your spine long. And then feel free to cycle the legs, bending one knee and then the other. So, interesting fact about down dog, 2 interesting facts about down dog. The first is that down dog is one of the few poses in yoga, there's not many of them, I want to say maybe 10, that we typically take, where every single one of our chakras gets worked and cleared up and aligned. Second interesting fact, I'm probably going to say that every single class that we do in the chakra series, because I find that very interesting. We do a lot of down dog in most yoga classes, so it just makes it one more reason to really love down dog. All right, still the motion. Shift your heels back. They may touch the earth, they may not. You can always roll up a blanket and bring it underneath your heels if you feel like the hovering of your heels is hard on your body. And nod your head yes slowly. And shake your head no slowly. And as you come back to stillness, take a moment here, draw your attention into the pelvis and hips. You're pretty much at the top point of the pyramid that you're making, or the triangle shape that you're making. And imagine energy flowing from that space all the way down the spine. And back up again. Take an inhale, lift your heels and bend your knees. Exhale and walk forward to your hands. We'll find one forward fold at the top of the mat. Bring your feet wide. Bend your knees. Grab opposite elbows and take a ragdoll swaying from side to side. And release your hands back down. Bring your feet underneath your hips. Take an inhale. Bring your hands to your shins or your thighs. Lengthen the crown of your head forward. Make a 90-degree angle with your body for half lift. Then as you exhale, fold back down to the earth. Drop your hands to your feet or to your mat. plant your hands and step your left foot to the back of your mat and drop your back knee down. Now feel free, if you have a blanket and would like to pad up under your knee, you can. Also, you can grab your blocks and frame your foot with your hands, placing them on your blocks. We're going to take a low lunge. So to start out, hands are going to frame the foot. And work your spine into as much length as you can find. And keep length all the way to the back of your neck, all the way to the crown of your head. And then rotate your inner legs in towards each other slightly. Notice what that does for your energy. As you press, really what you're doing is pressing your activation and your muscles in towards the center. So whether you want to describe it as drawing energy inward or just pressing the muscles in your inner legs in towards each other is really all the same thing. And what that does is draw energy into your center of gravity and also activate the muscles around the hips. And here we're doing a little bit of strengthening. Hip flexor on the right leg is working inward, holding us in place, but also a little bit of stretching as well. We're going to keep the left hand planted to your mat or to your block. I'm going to set my block on a lower setting. And then sweep your right hand up to the sky. This is a low lunge twist. You want to avoid the tendency, it's kind of hard to see with me wearing black, but avoid the tendency to have your right hip start to open towards the sky. You want to keep your right hip in line with the left so that the twisting is coming from above your pelvis. You can look up at your right hand if you would like. Breathe here. Slowly come back, frame your foot with your hands, and set your blocks to the side. Tuck your back toes, lift your back knee off the mat, and step back into a downward facing dog. Then bring your left foot forward between your hands and drop your back knee down. Pad up underneath it if you would like. Grab your blocks if you'd like, and frame your front foot with them. So you've definitely got weight in your hands, but if you feel like you're doing this and collapsing into your hands, tighten up the muscles in your belly and lengthen your spine. And try to bring lightness to your fingertips so that they're supporting you, but you're not collapsing onto them. Your spine long. And the muscles in the body that give us the strength we need for upright motion are in the core and in the hips. So ideally we want our strength to be coming from those places, and then everything else provides accessory roles. Because ultimately, probably not going to find ourselves walking on our shoulders, but hips and core are what will hold you upright as you're walking. And frankly, as our bodies age and have a more difficult time moving around, having those muscles nice and strong, and having kept them nice and strong your entire life will help us all immensely. That's my soapbox. Okay, rotate inner legs in towards each other. So it's a very subtle motion. Maybe you remember the Mula Bandha that we worked on last week. It's not quite like that, but it's that same sensation of things are tightening, only now the focus is on the hips. So it's more outer muscles wrapping in towards the center. And then you can keep your right hand planted, and send your left hand to the sky. Open heart, long spine. Again, try to keep your left hips in line with the right, so most of the twisting is coming from above the hips. One more inhale here. As you exhale, frame your front foot with your hands, set your blocks aside, tuck your toes, and then step to the front of your mat and forward fold. Oh yeah, okay. I'm pretty sure we did this pose last time. We're going to come into a squat. Separate your feet wide and point your toes to angles. Grab your block if you would like to use it for support underneath your hips. I'll go ahead and show you that. And I think after a while I'm going to set it aside. And you may want to as well. So I'll do medium setting. Drop your hips low. If you need to stay up here, you can. And this is really working the legs, so it'll be challenging in a different way. It's not as opening for the hips. If you have the flexibility today, drop your hips low and allow them to come in the direction of your heels. Now, you'll notice I'm sitting down on my block, so I'm still getting the hip opening. It's not quite so deep because my hips are not going all the way down and not being pulled all the way down to the earth because the gravity wants them to go there. My body says, no, that's not going to happen. So the block creates support. And bring your elbows inside your knees, knees outside your elbows, and find a little tension there. Knees press against elbows, elbows press against knees. So what we're doing is activating, again, the muscles in the inner and outer legs, the muscles surrounding and attached to the pelvis. Lengthen your spine as much as possible. Now I am going to take my block and move it. Ooh. Right, my body's saying I may not stay here for very long, but I'm gonna stay here for a bit. This is very deep opening for the pelvis. Breathe. Send your awareness into the space where fire is being created. Imagine that warmth is your own creative energy and potential. What could you do if you knew that you had no limitations? All right, one last inhale here. And as you exhale, plant your hands, lift your hips high, and find your forward fold. One more time. From your forward fold. This time, I'm going to step the right foot back so the left foot is in front. Normally we start on the right side, but let's start on the left side this time. Bend into your front knee, hands frame your foot. You can always grab your blocks and bring them under your hands, but we're not going to be here very long. All right, I think this is a pose we have not done yet. Starting to get into a little bit more heating poses in this class. Gearing up for the solar plexus chakra next week, but we will save that for September. All right, back to sacral chakra. From here, inhale. Come up so that the crown of your head lifts to the sky. And find high lunge. So hands can be at heart center like I've got here, or you can sweep your hands to the sky. Once again, rotate inner legs in towards each other and bring fire to that space between. And notice what that does for the balance. I'll take one more inhale here. As you exhale, I'm going to turn to face towards the long edge of your mat. So let's start with the leg alignment here. Edge of your right foot is parallel with the back of your mat. Toes of your left foot are pointing straight forward. Hips are turned towards the side and legs are straight. Arms come out to a T. All right, take an inhale. Reach your left hand out over your leg. Exhale. Allow your hand to drop down to your leg and reach your right hand to the sky for a triangle pose. So right fingertips and left fingertips are in line with each other. And right shoulder's rolling open. I always say visualize as if the back of your body could press fully against a back wall, which is not really possible, but that's the shape that we're going for. Hold here. I will be honest, I did not look this up before teaching class, but it's just now occurring to me. If I'm wrong about this, I'll let you know in the next one. I think triangle may be another one of the poses that aligns all the chakras. I think so. Pretty cool. Take an inhale here, come back up. Rotate your hips to face towards the front of the mat. So your back toes are naturally going to start to point in the same direction as your front toes. And then we're going to step the back foot in. So it's about 1.5 to 2 feet behind the front. Your toes are going to face forward, but you can railroad track your feet slightly so they come towards the long edges of your mat, because it can be a little difficult to balance when there's a very narrow stance between the 2 feet. So it's up to you. Again, hips are pointing forward. Feel free to grab your blocks and to set them so they frame your front foot, and then come back up to standing to set up for pyramid pose. So pyramid pose, your hands can be on your hips, elbows pointing back. If you would like a little bit deeper, you can bring your fists to touch behind your low back, or your hands into reverse prayer position. Take an inhale, open across your collarbones. Then as you exhale, with a long spine, hinge from your hips and fold forward. And take an inhale here. And then as you exhale, drop your hands down to your blocks. Forward fold, keep your spine long. Notice what you experience in the back of your left leg. You may not need the blocks here. Just resist the urge to curve down like this. Try to keep your spine long. It's not about how far down you go. Bring your hands to your hips, tighten it against the backs of your legs, and then inhale to come back up, right, and step your back foot to the front of the mat. Set your blocks slightly to the side, but have them nearby. And bring your palms to face forward alongside your body. Take a moment here, finding a standing mountain pose. Ground through your feet, lift the crown of your head. Inhale, reach your fingertips up to the sky. Exhale, fold forward. Drop your hands down to the earth. This time, step your left foot back. So right foot's going to be in front. Stay on the ball of your back foot. We're going to come up into our high lunge one more time, our crescent warrior. Press through your feet. Lift the crown of your head. Hands can come to heart, or you can reach your hands to the sky. Shoulders relaxed. Strong breath, strong gaze. Rotate your inner thighs in towards each other. And breathe here. Take one more inhale here. Exhale, turn to face towards the long edge of your mat. Check in with your feet. Right toes are pointing forward. Edge of your back foot's parallel with the mat. Bring your arms out to a T. And gaze over your front fingertips. Inhale, stretch your right hand out over your leg. Exhale. Drop your right hand to the inside of your front leg. Lift your left hand to the sky. So you can always grab a block and place it under your right hand. You can look up at your left hand. Rotate your left shoulder and your left hip open, but keep your left hand pointing straight up to the sky and not reaching towards the back of the room. Take one more inhale here. Exhale. Start to make your way back up to center. Begin to turn your pelvis to face towards the front of the mat, which will turn your back toes to face forward as well. And step your back foot in to a point where it's about 1.5 to 2 feet behind your front foot. Railroad track your feet if you would like, broadening your stance. Feel free to grab your blocks, bring your front foot with them, know that they're nearby, and then bring your hands to your hips. Or press fists together behind your low back or your palms together. Inhale, lift the crown of your head and lengthen. Exhale, hinge from your hips, fold forward, keep your spine long. You can fold forward any amount. Only take it to a place where you can keep your spine long and breathe here. Again, inner legs wrapping in towards the center. One more inhale. Exhale. Drop your hands down to the floor or to blocks. Keep your spine long. Keep your forward fold going, but as you have support, not needing to use so much muscular strength. A few more breaths here. Bring your hands to your hips, press through your feet, slowly lift your way back up, and step to the front of your mat, and forward fold at the front of your mat. And drop one knee to the floor, bring the other knee to meet it, cross your ankles, and roll onto your back. And once you're there, we'll set up for a bridge pose. So, bring your heels close in towards you, hips width. I recommend you also have a block nearby because we will do one bridge pose where we're just using the muscles, and then one where we'll do a supported bridge, which can feel very nice. So, heels close in, feet hips width. Release your arms alongside your body. And as you inhale, press through your feet and your shoulders. Lift your hips and low back, maybe mid back and upper back as well. Rotate your inner legs in towards each other, only this time they're not pressing together. Imagine that you put a block between your legs and you're holding it. A little tension there. Draw the muscles in your glutes in as well. Hold here. A couple breaths in and a couple breaths out. Take one more inhale here. And exhale. Slowly release. Bring the entire back of your upper body into the mat. And then one more time with reclined bound angle. Soles of your feet touch, knees open. And you can bring hands against hip points. Or bring one hand to your heart and one to your belly. And breathe here. And begin to close your knees. Bring your feet back into bridge pose position. Hips width, heels in close. This time grab your block, have it nearby. Lift your hips just enough to set the block on either the low or medium setting right at your sacrum. So we're actually targeting the sacrum space in the spine. So it's just above the tailbone, just above the hips. It's that flat space on your low back. And then rest that space against your block. Now if this causes pinching, set your block to the side. And just rest with your hips resting against the mat. Otherwise, hold here. Draw your attention back into the sacral chakra space. Maybe come back to the mantra of I flow with the rhythms of life. Press into your feet. Lift your hips slightly and set your block to the side. Rest your low back down to the earth and hug your knees in towards your chest. And rock from side to side a few times. Press your tailbone into the earth as you rock, and maybe feel a massage for your low back. And from here, cross your right ankle over your left. You can grab behind your left thigh or to the front of your left shin and hold your legs closer towards you to deepen your figure four stretch, or you can release your left foot to the earth for a little bit less intense of a stretch. Hold here for a few inhales and exhales. And release. And switch the position of your legs, left ankle over right thigh. Grabbing behind your right thigh or to the front of your right shin to deepen, or release your right foot to the earth to lessen. A few breaths here. And release and draw your knees back in towards your chest. Bring your arms out to a T and take an inhale. Exhale, drop your knees to the right side, or knees down twist. You can look off to the left, you can keep your arms to a T. You can use your right hand to guide your knees down. Inhale, come back to center. Exhale, drop your knees to the left side. And look off to the right. Inhale, make your way back to center. Hug your knees in towards you. On your next inhale, lift your forehead up towards your knees and tighten everything into the center. Then on your exhale, extend your legs out to the corners of your mat and release your legs down. Bring your arms alongside your body. Flip your palms up. As we spend a few minutes in Shavasana, you can relax your breath and allow your mind to rest, or if your mind needs to wander, that's okay, but try not to become attached to any one thought. you want to focus your mind, maybe visualize a glowing sphere of orange light. It can hover behind your eyelids, or it might hover above the hips and pelvis. And we'll rest here a couple minutes, and then we will wrap this up. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Slide the exhale out of your mouth. Start to move your fingers and your toes, your ankles and your wrists, and your arms and your legs. Start to take a stretch, maybe a full body stretch, reaching fingertips and toes away from each other. And eventually, rocking off to one side. And slowly make your way up to a seated position. You can use your hands to guide you. Bring your hands to heart center. And once again, it's an opportunity to come back to our mantra, I flow with the rhythms of life. Maybe that seems a little more appealing or accessible after this class. I hope so. Let's bring thumb knuckles to the forehead center. The light in me recognizes, honors, and bows to the light in all of you, whoever has come here to practice. I appreciate you. Let us bow to one another and say namaste. I hope that that was enjoyable and beneficial. So a couple things that you can do to also help heal the sacral chakra. Like I said, yoga poses and stretches that focus on strengthening and stretching the hips. Groin stretches like that squat is a very deep inner leg stretch. And because we did such a deep stretch, didn't get into goddess or horse squat, but we'll probably be doing one of those in the future, and that's another good one. If you were into meditation, a fixed gaze meditation using a candle, point to my candle, there it is, where you stare at a candle flame for a while and alternate closing the eyes and opening the eyes and just watching the flame burn. If you've ever had a campfire and you just stare at the flame and you feel like, I could do this for hours, that's fixed gaze meditation using a flame. Very good meditation for the sacral chakra. Creative endeavors, whatever that might look like to you. And having healthy romantic and sexual relationships, ones that build you up, not tear you down, can be healing for those parts of the sacral chakra that have been damaged over time. Above all, don't neglect any part of yourself, no matter what society says. We need to look at all parts of our being and treat them with loving kindness. So thank you so much. Next class will be the solar plexus chakra, which is the abs. I'm excited. So if you're looking for more of a workout, the next one's going to be more of a workout. We'll do some yoga core work and maybe some Pilates core work as well. And also find some healing for our sense of inner strength. So I will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye.